G'day everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We're just going to hold tight for a little memento to make sure that everyone sort of gets settled in before we kick off. So hold tight. Okie dokie, let's get underway. My name's Dallas. I'm one of the enrollment advisors here at Coder Academy, and we're going to have a bit of a chat today, talk about a few options. Talk about our course that we have available, our full stack web development bootcamp, and also we're going to get Alex on. We've got a guest speaker, and he's going to have a bit of a chat too. So let's move on through where coders are made. So the agenda here, I'm just going to have a bit of a chat. We're going to talk about our Web Dev Bootcamp 101, and then there's going to be a MIDI coding lesson in ReactJS with our educator, Alex. And then we'll have some Q&A at the end. So, in the spirit of reconciliation, Coder Academy acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Who are we? I've already introduced myself. That's me there with my phone number and my email address. We've also got Tom here to have a bit of a chat about a little bit of housekeeping. Tom?
Hey guys, my name's Tom. I'm also an enrollment advisor for Coder Academy. So for the most part, guys, when it comes to our housekeeping, all questions will be answered at the end or as we go through them. And the best way for you guys to actually send questions is could everyone please open up your chat box and just say hello? And you will see a line, you'll see words that say to, and then could you everyone just click everyone? That way we can all see your questions. We'll go through all of them at the end. So just to test right now, can everyone just say hi, how are you, or hey, whatever works for there? Beautiful. Hi there. I don't want to butcher your name. Prapna. How you doing, man? But yeah, for like I said, all questions will be answered at the end. And other than that, though, I'll hand it back to Dallas now. Too easy.
Cheers. Thanks for that, Tom. So, just for clarification, we'll do our best to answer the questions at the end, but absolutely throw your questions into chat as we're going. So, we have a bit of a backlog of those questions. So, they're all sitting there. So we've also got Alex. Alex, come on. Alex has been an educator with us for like 9 or 10 years. He knows all there is to know. Okay, not everything there is to know, but so much about full stack web development and also games development. And he dabbles in the fine arts such as Pokemon.
Yes. Hello, hello. You'll see me through the webinar.
Cheers. Thanks, Alex. All right, cool. So we'll kick on with a bit of information about our coding bootcamp, and then we'll dive into what Alex has got to say. So, who employs full stack web developers? Essentially everyone. But IT companies, first and foremost, as you can imagine, IT companies have a lot of developers in there, but also places like retail. So, the retail industry has a lot of developers too. There is so much, I guess, shopping done online these days, and all of those sort of like online, portals that people are using to purchase things and also sell things sometimes. They're all run by full stack developers. Okay, so they're the ones building those platforms and they're the ones maintaining them. Also, financial institutions is a big one too. Fintech is huge in the tech industry. And also, we probably all use banking applications day to day these days, and it's full stack web developers or full stack developers that are the ones behind those applications as well. I've also got digital agencies written down. It could mean pretty much anyone, but for example, maybe data analysis in sort of like marketing teams and that sort of thing. Also maintaining, websites from that perspective. Development goes a long way. It's not just the tech industry; it's all over. Most industries have some sort of development role available. So the average salary for a full stack developer is about $120,000 a year. Obviously, that's the average salary of a dev who's been in the industry for at least 1 or 2 years. What you're looking at is probably closer to $70,000 or $80,000 as a green developer, like a junior full stack developer that's just moving directly out of study, just graduated. You're probably looking at between $70,000 and $80,000 a year, which isn't too bad when you consider our boot camp is only 10 months in length. You learn so much. So, who is our bootcamp ideal for? Pretty much everyone. Career changes is a really big one. There's a lot of people out there that are currently working in an industry. Maybe they've been there for 10 years. They're looking to change career, but they also don't want to go and do another 3-year degree or lengthy sort of study like that. Our 10-month boot camps are perfect. They can be completed with a full-time job. Yeah, so we're kind of like the better option for career changes that are looking to break into a new industry that does require, a pretty solid foundation, a pretty solid skill set. Upskillers as well. We have a lot of people who are currently in the tech industry who come on board for our boot camps. Maybe it's a developer who happened to be in a job for a long time, only working on languages that are now considered legacy languages, so older ones that don't get used as often, and they need to basically upskill to learn, sort of more like, current technologies and sort of, get back to the pointy end of tech, so to speak. So we have plenty of people who are currently devs joining us as well. And like I mentioned before, it's a great alternative to uni. Our bootcamp is a higher education diploma of web development. And because it actually delivers university level subjects, you can actually use it to get credit if you want to move on to further study afterwards. So here's a bit more information on the bootcamp. The next intake is the 31st of March. It's 10 months, as mentioned. There is a 4-week optional industry placement that occurs at the end of the bootcamp. We'll talk more about that in a moment. It's delivered 100% online, okay? So there are 8 hours of live classes per week that must be attended. And then outside of that, there's about a recommended 23 hours of self-study. So it's a fair bit to handle. But if you're working a full-time job, but it can be done. We do have students who are currently working full-time and completing a boot camp at the same time. And look, it's a lot to handle. You won't be doing too much outside of work and study, but it's only a 10-month period. So it's a short stint in the scheme of things. So additional support, we have a Discord. So every intake or every cohort will receive a couple of Discord channels where they can sort of talk to educators for support and also their peers alike. That's available Monday to Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. We also have campuses in Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne. So if you want to go in and use the facilities there, you are more than welcome. And that's open Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. As mentioned earlier, higher education diploma of web development is the qualification, and the price right now is only $15,000. So we've actually knocked 30% off the top of that. There is more information on our website. We're just trying to give back to the industry. So if you want to learn more about that, you can jump on the website and check out the blogs. I believe it's the first one. It sort of talks about why we've changed our price point to sort of do our part. Fee help is also available for Australian citizens and New Zealand special category visa holders. If you are one of those, you will know it. And ultimately, because we are a higher education, diploma, because we're an accredited course, you can utilize fee help government loans to defer payment. Here is a little bit of a more visual breakdown of that for you. So the green areas, they are when your live classes are going to be. So you can actually work a full-time job Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and still be able to attend our classes. And you do have online Discord support Monday to Friday there, Monday to Saturday, Monday to Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And also campuses are available for students to come and study at too. Bit of a breakdown of the boot camp here. There could be some terminology thrown around that you may not entirely understand. If you do, that's fantastic. But if you don't, just keep in mind that we will be teaching you everything from the ground up if you come on board for a boot camp with us. No prior knowledge is needed in coding. All we really ask is that you have a passion to learn and you're ready to basically get amongst it. Look, you'll be touching on HTML and CSS to start with. You'll be building a portfolio website, which is essentially a website about you professionally that you want to be able to showcase to potential employers later on after the bootcamp. And you'll be also be doing some Python programming and building a terminal application. and using Python with Flask. So Python being the first object-oriented language that you learn, and Flask being sort of the first framework that you touch on. And then moving on, you'll be touching on JavaScript and deployment, and then React. So JavaScript being the object-oriented language, so another one, and then React being the preferred framework for that particular language. And then you'll be building a full stack web application for a client. You'll also be touching on DevOps fundamentals and the usage of AWS and Docker, which is really cool. Now, the optional industry placement is also that comes next. This one always has plenty of questions surrounding this one. Ultimately, in order to be eligible for industry placement, you need to have a first-time pass rate on your assessments, and you need to have a credit average, which is not difficult to achieve. It might sound a bit daunting, but it really isn't. And then other than that, you just need to be able to have the soft skills to be able to sort of speak to people and conduct yourself in an interview situation. Our partnerships team, they do also offer support in the way of helping you with the resumes and also getting you ready for interviews and technical interviews. So if that sort of thing is not your jam, we definitely can help you there as well. But it's a really fantastic opportunity. These are just some of the partners that we have currently. You'll see a couple of really big companies in there that you're probably familiar with, a few smaller ones and a few sort of medium-sized ones. What we try and do is we have a really good balance of partners because we try to tailor the industry placements to the students. Okay, so not everyone wants to work for a giant company, but also not everyone wants to, do an industry placement with a small company, a startup, where they have to wear many hats and really get really hands-on. So we try to tailor them to the student or the grad, so to speak. Diversity in Tech Scholarship, this one's available as well. You can find out more information on the website, but ultimately, there is one scholarship available per intake. It gives you 50% off of all course fees, and it's open to domestic students. Application process is very, very simple. You go on the website, you hit the button, it says apply, and then you go ahead and complete enrollment. We guide you the whole way through, so the admissions team will be reaching out to you step by step as you go through the enrollment process, the application and enrollment process. I know a big question that always comes up is how do I apply for the Fee Help government loan to defer payment? We actually try to make it as easy as possible, and we actually tie that all in with our enrollment process. So if you follow the prompts, you'll be completely enrolled and get access to Fee Help before you know it. Before we jump into questions, we are going to get Alex to come back on and do his thing. Welcome.
Cool. Thanks for that, Dallas. Awesome. Hello, hello. Great to see so many people in this webinar. It's going to be awesome. What I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen, and basically we'll just do kind of like a simulated lesson. So in our boot camps, you saw on the schedule, we do lessons that are typically 2 hours or 4 hours in length. Today's going to be a little bit shorter, so we'll be mixing and matching things around to try and get the ball rolling very quickly when we do the content here today. So I'm going to share my screen. There we go. I'll get my chat windows back up. One of the things that I like to do when we are teaching in these lessons is basically treat it like it's a stream. So I'll have the chat open. If you have questions, post them in the chat, and we'll answer them as they pop up. Or we can put them to the side at the end for the Q&A with Dallas and everyone else at the end as well. Either way, we'll just make that work. So yeah, hello. We'll get started on the content and the lesson. So my name's Alex. As briefly mentioned, I've been here for several years, basically teaching all sorts of IT stuff, teaching video games, teaching web development, teaching augmented reality, virtual reality, 3D design, a whole bunch of stuff. What we'll be doing today is looking at web development with ReactJS. It's it's the most popular web framework for making modern websites. So it's a very powerful thing. It's also something that we look at in term 2 of the bootcamp. So if we go through stuff today and it's not completely making sense, that's okay, because when we go through it in the course, you'll have a whole, I think it's 5 months at that point in the course of content to back up your knowledge and help understand all these awesome things that we're looking at. So what we want to do first is just give a bit of context about what that is, why we cover it, and why it's important. With React in particular, we'll have a look at this industry survey here. This is Stack Overflow. If you've had a bit of tinkering or like curious Googling about programming so far, you might have come across Stack Overflow as like a resource for debugging and troubleshooting. It is kind of an industry hub for just people doing things and getting problems solved. And they do an industry survey every year. One of the things that we like to look at in this survey is just exactly what is popular and what is in use in the industry. For us, that helps us identify that we're teaching the right stuff, making sure it's all relevant. And when we look at this one, this is the most popular technologies. We're looking at the specific tab of professional developers as well. I'll put this link into the chat because if you want to go through this yourself, it's a very good page to go through. But you can see from this table here, JavaScript is right up the top. ReactJS is React with JavaScript. It's very specifically built on top of that language. So it's a huge in-demand, very commonly used system, very commonly used language and framework. It's very important for anyone to learn if they want to be a web developer. We also look at SQL, HTML and CSS, and Python. So as far as our bootcamp goes, we cover the top 4 entries here about what professionals are using in their work. You'll see a whole bunch of other stuff down here as well, like all sorts of other languages, but we focus on the top 4 because we want to make sure that you're getting content that is useful to the industry, not just for like, oh, it's popular because everyone's learning it. It's popular because the professionals are using it. So we want to make sure that whatever you're doing with us, it's going to be useful for you in a job. One of the other tables that we like to look at, databases is a good one to look at as well. We cover Postgres and MongoDB. You might look at that and go like, oh, number 1 and number 5. But the key thing here is that number 1 and numbers 2, 3, and 4, they're all SQL. They're all very similar. So MongoDB, it's a different one, which makes it useful for different kinds of companies. Like as Dallas mentioned, we cover industry partners with large enterprise businesses as well as small startups. Those different types of companies use these different technologies. So we help make sure that whatever you're learning is in demand and in use and relevant to the industry. The other one, cloud platforms, that's a good one as well. If we have a look at professional development there. In term 2, we look at AWS, so Amazon Web Services, and you can see that's the leading cloud platform by a mile. So it's very important for us. The important one that I wanted to show here for today's lesson in particular is web frameworks and technologies. Again, going to the professional developers tab, you can see ReactJS, it's the big thing. It's used by 41.6% of professional developers. Node.js, if you've been looking around for programming stuff so far, you might have seen a little bit of Node.js. It's basically the engine that anything JavaScript related runs on. So React runs on Node. So we cover Node as part of our JavaScript content because Node, it's JavaScript. We also have a look at Express. That's a backend server, so making APIs and web servers with not just Python and Flask, but with JavaScript and Express. So, and you can see Flask here as well. But the idea is that we are covering all sorts of in-demand technologies. And today we'll look at the most in-demand, most popular one. We'll look at React. So what we'll do, in a typical lesson, we would be getting everyone to make a repository on GitHub. What that just means is that you will have somewhere to store your work and not just keep track of it and preserve it as you learn more things and build more features to it, but also a place for you to show off your work. So GitHub is a way for any sort of programmer to store their work in a way that they can show it off and share it. Because what you'll see in a lot of IT is that the world runs on open source. It's probably a bit of hyperbole to say, but like so much out there is just shared for everyone to see and use. So GitHub is a very, what's the right word here? It's a very important system, tool for that system. It kind of underpins what we do in IT. So in GitHub, everyone would have a profile. You can see like, oh, yep, big introduction about me, some articles, examples of the tech that you'll learn, cool photos or whatever, links to your work, and showcasing your repositories and things like that. So a profile like this, you'd be making more and more work throughout every lesson, through every term. We want to make sure that in the bootcamp, it's very practical for you so that you've got all of this cool stuff to show you your skills and show off who you are when you go into the industry. So what we'll do for our lesson here, we'll make a new repository. And yes, the more green dots, the better. You can see I've got a bunch here. There are some people that game the system. If you're really, really into programming, you can absolutely get all the green dots. What I'll do as well, I'll put the link to my profile in the chat, just in case anyone wants to connect or see like the sort of stuff that we do. but we'll make a new repository. We'll call this one CA webinar React lesson. So this repository, it's tied to my account. We'll say that this one is, let's call this one the Pokedex project. As you can maybe see in the webcam view here, I do have a bunch of Pokemon stuff all around me. I'm a big fan. One of the resources that we like to use in our classes is a Pokemon API. It's essentially just a way for us to work with data and get used to the idea of working with large sets of data through web servers. So we can focus on building a website with React, and we don't have to try and build our own server just yet to try and work with data. We can just use an existing server that happens to be full of Pokemon. It's really cool, really fun for me at the very least. So our website today will make a Pokedex. That just means that we can let someone search for a Pokemon and see a bunch of data about that Pokemon. So in larger projects and in larger companies, you'd be doing a lot of that type of work plus additional features. What we try and do in our lessons is try and make sure that you'll see things step by step, feature by feature, functionality by functionality, essentially. So we are looking at searching and rendering data. That's two key features for how you'd be doing things in a modern website. We'll keep this public. We won't add any files to the project just yet, because what we can do when we start making the website is generate a whole bunch of stuff automatically. The modern tools that we have for making websites these days, they'll add a lot of really good
We may have lost Alex ever so briefly.
He's having a bit of a technical difficulties on his end. His internet's a bit
That's all
unstable
good.
at the moment. It's all good
He'll be back.
in a few
No
minutes.
worries. Also, I'd just like to say while we're here, I had no idea that he was going to make this project about Pokemon when I said that he loved Pokemon. It was just sort of a passing comment, but here we are. So I hope everyone likes Pokemon. Oh man.
And for the most
Um,
part, when you learn these skills, you can kind of you can kind of tailor this towards your own interests for the future anyway. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
for sure, definitely. I mean, yeah, Pokemon's just an example. He needs to give something visual, but I'm sure we'll see him back real soon. Does anyone have any questions in the meantime about the boot camps and what we have to offer? No?
Don't be shy,
No?
guys. We can answer them.
All good. Well, I'll talk more about, let's just talk about fee help government loans for a minute. So, with fee help government loans, you can defer payment. Some people ask about Hex help. Hex help and fee help are actually, they're very similar. They come from the same fund for the government. So yeah, those if you have a Hex help loan already, then it's very similar process in getting a fee help loan. In order to be eligible for a fee help government loan, you need to be an Australian citizen or a New Zealand special category visa holder.
Hmm.
And other than that, I think there's probably, don't quote me on this, but there's about $117,000 available to you for tertiary education you can borrow. So it's a lot, to be honest. That's a lot of study.
Hmm.
So if you're wondering if you have funds available to you, if you haven't done this before, there's a good chance that you do. Um, it's pretty simple. It's a very simple application process that will sort of push you through. And generally, you do get an immediate response to find out.
So Dallas, Vic has a question
Yeah,
here. Do the live sessions get recorded as well so we can watch them back if we miss something? I think, are you talking about the actual classes for the boot camp or this session over here? If you don't mind me
either
asking.
way.
The classes, yeah. So do the classes get recorded essentially?
Yeah, cool. So the classes do get recorded. I guess what you need to keep in mind is that because we're a nationally recognized sort of higher education diploma of web development is what we deliver. You do actually need to attend those classes. You need to have an 80% attendance record in order to pass the class. So missing classes is not ideal. It does happen. People get sick, life gets in the way. So it's okay if it happens here and there. But ultimately, you do want to do your best to attend those live classes. But yes, they are recorded. They are recorded for reflection. It could be multiple reasons why you want to do it. You might just be very studious and you want to go back and reflect on things. You heard something that you think may have been incorrect in your notes, so you want to go back and look at that. Maybe English is not your first language, and maybe you might need to sort of go through it again to sort of make sure you didn't miss anything or you didn't misinterpret anything. So yeah, they're definitely all recorded for you and available on our platform, Canvas.
Thick as.
Cool, sweet. And also, this webinar is recorded too. You can find it on our YouTube channel if you happen to need to duck away or anything like that.
Prafna just also sent in a message. Where is the physical campus in Brisbane? I think you maybe
Yeah, so
talked about the support hubs. Is that correct? Dallas?
um no, so there's no support hubs available physically anymore.
Hmm.
But yeah, but the campus is available in Charlotte Street. So Charlotte Street in Brisbane CBD. So it's right smack bang in the middle of the city. And that's that. Yeah, so that's open to students Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. You can come and study in the aircon, use the internet, all that sort of jazz, all those sort of facilities. But keep in mind that the live classes that you'll be attending, they're actually recorded mostly in our educators' home offices. So,
Hmm.
like for example, where Alex was right there in his camera, that's where he'll be conducting a lot of his yeah
Hmm.
classes. So we don't actually deliver them on campus.
Yep. So there's no
Yep.
on-campus delivery, and with that in mind, it's not by appointment. You can just rock up to the campus as long as they know that you are a student. Is that correct, Alice, or no?
Sorry, could you say that again?
Yep. So Nafna is also asking, is when it comes to going to the campus, is it by appointment or can they just rock up whenever they want, essentially?
Yeah, so you can definitely rock up whenever you want and just use the campus facilities. So there are rooms there available.
Mm.
And yeah, so you could, if you wanted to, you could basically go there like every day, like a full-time job, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, if you wanted to. But yeah,
Oh,
Alex,
Oh,
oh,
hello,
and there comes
hello.
Alex back.
he
All
returns.
right,
Sorry, Hash. We'll
sorry
save your
about that.
question till after, if that's okay, and we'll answer that
Cool.
afterwards. All good. Hand it back to you, Alex.
Oh man, I'm sorry I missed questions as well. I know. I'll share my screen again. Where did we cut off? Like, I know it was mid-sentence. Um,
That's a great question. Um, I'm not sure.
that's all right. So we were just about to make a repository. What we're going to do, we are going to create it. It'll be on our account for the world to see. And what we can do here is set this up and clone it to our computer. So with these lessons, what we try and do is we make sure that you can see your work publicly, show it off to the world, and then also make it really easy for you to work on your own computer. Um, that just means that we can click a button, set it up in GitHub Desktop, super nice and simple. In term one, you'll also be learning how to use Git through the terminal, so the command line. But what I like to do, just to keep things rolling really quickly, is just use the desktop application, which should pop up on another screen. Here we go. So let's just say, yep, this is the right repository. We'll clone it to a location on our computer, and we're off for the races. So what we do with this is we'll open Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is a free piece of software as well. So all the tools that we'll be using in the bootcamp, they are either free or they have a really generous student tier. So we want to make sure that you can just get things happening without costing an arm and a leg. So Visual Studio Code, I had a link for that somewhere as well. Oh, come on, open up that one. It's a free piece of software. You'll be installing that through the course as well. If anyone wants to jump into it before the course, I'll put the link in the chat as well, because it's really, really powerful. It is the industry standard tooling for doing so many types of IT projects. The other main coding editor that you may see in other IT studies is Visual Studio. The name is not very helpful, I know, because Visual Studio Code is what we'll be using, and Visual Studio is the other one that we don't cover. But if you were to make video games or more Microsoft-focused products, you'd be using that other Visual Studio. But Visual Studio Code is like the general one for everything. So we'll have that open. We have our repository here. And what we can do, this may be a bit risky given the MBN's already had some issues today. is we'll start a terminal and start a live share. So what we like to do in the courses is give you a way to access all of the code that we're doing, not just what we're showing on the screen. So this link in the chat may or may not require you to have Visual Studio Code installed. It might work in a web browser, just depends on your computer settings. But that lets you, oh, thanks, Tom. I didn't realize Zoom set me back to saying hosts and panelists. There we go. All right, so with the live share, what we can do is we can just say, yep, come on in, have a look at this workspace. Because when the screen shows one file at a time or whatever we're showing to the screen, what you can do is navigate through the workspace and see whatever file you want. So if you get curious about something that we're doing, you can dig into it and see what's going on and then quickly jump back to whatever we're showing as well, following along with all the stuff that we do in the lessons. So it's a very cool system, very powerful system, just as long as the NBN doesn't get too upset with like the weather being too hot, too cold, too dry, or too wet, and so on. But we have our editor, we have our project, it's nice and empty, so we can start editing and adding things to this. For a React project, what we do is we use a generator to make the start of the project. And George saying the link opened in a web browser with a web browser editor. Fantastic. That's really good. That means you can jump along and follow along right here and now if you'd like to as well. So what we do to get started with our project is we do npm create vite at latest, and we say /. You'll see there's also a bit of a hint for the rest of the command there too, but we don't need to worry about that one. What this command is, it's a command from Node.js. So this is the Node package manager, that's npm. We are saying that we want to create a project, and we want to create a project based on Vite. Vite is a really powerful system for any sort of React stuff. It's as it says, it's a build tool for the web. So what that means for us is that we can make a really complex project and then we'll use Vite to compile that or bundle that into just standard HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. This is really good for us because it means that we can do crazy complex, powerful things through our programming, stuff that we really couldn't do with just regular HTML and CSS. And we'll compile that into a nice optimal little bundle for a website to display and run. So in our code, we say we want to use the latest version of Vite. We want to create it in current directory, so the current directory. And sometimes we'll just but I want to show something that's really cool with Vite. It's a build tool. It's not tied to React in particular, but if we do this command here, we'll do npm create vite at latest /. That will show us a nice list of different types of projects that we could do. When PowerShell decides to start running the command, I'm hoping this means the internet doesn't crash again, but we'll see how we go. Oh, there we go. So with Vite, because it's a build tool, it has all these different presets and options for us to start working with all sorts of websites. We could make a vanilla website that's just HTML and CSS and JavaScript. We could have a look at a whole bunch of other different frameworks as well. But we'll stick to React, and you'll see that they've got even more variants too. For the sake of our course and our lessons, we just stick to JavaScript. You might see TypeScript in demand out there as well, but one of the things that I've found using TypeScript in my own work outside of Coder Academy, TypeScript is really cool, but it doesn't really work so well if you don't know JavaScript first, because that's built on top of JavaScript. So we make sure that in our course, you get those fundamentals and those core skills for you to go and transfer your skills across to any other framework as well. Like in the schedule that Dallas showed at the start, right? We have Python and Flask, and then we go to JavaScript with Express. So we show how to transfer your skills and concepts from one language and framework to another language and framework. And you can keep on doing that with any other language and framework that you encounter in your career. So we'll stick to JavaScript here. We have the scaffold. You can see it has created a bunch of stuff along the left. So it's got the README, it's got a git ignore. We'll have a look at more of those files in a second as well. But it's also given us some instructions. We need to install some packages, and then we can run the website. So we'll do npm install. You'll keep seeing that these commands sometimes will give us hints based on previous commands that I've done, because I do a lot of development here as well. But we want to make sure we get these highlighted commands. So we are installing packages. That's created a node modules folder up the top here. That just means that the packages or the dependencies that we see in the core of a project, so the package.json file for JavaScript, they are all installed. So we've got React, we have React for the browser, that's the DOM, and a bunch of tools to help us do React work. So those are all installed, and now we can say npm run dev, and now we have a website. So we've actually created a little web server to help us test what we are looking at and what we are building. So if I open this up, that should open in this browser just here. We'll make sure that loads. There we go. So we have a React app. You can see it's Vite plus React. The count is here. We can press a button and it can do things. Might look like a bit of a silly thing. Press a button, makes the number go up. But it's a really huge fundamental feature of the web. Because if you think about it, any website that you look at, it's basically a way for you to interact with a page and see some data change. So when you're looking at something like a social media website, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, whatever, they give you different buttons, they give you different keyboard inputs, and they'll show different data based on what you've been doing on that page. So we have an example of that pre-built for us, and we can look at that code and adapt that to the features that we want to do. So yes, clicker games are a huge one. I think even like Cookie Clicker was just JavaScript and HTML. So it's really, really nice, really simple stuff if you wanted to make games like that. But what we want to do, we want to make our Pokedex. So a Pokemon like library, we want to search for names of Pokemon and see some data returned from a Pokemon API. So that means that we need to create a way for us to type in something and then press a button to make a search request happen and then display data based on the result of that request. So in our code, we'll have a look. What we're seeing at the moment is a package.json. This is the heart of a React app. This essentially defines what it is, what's inside of it, and how it actually works. So we ran the dev command that just runs Vite. Vite says, yep, this is a website, we'll run the website. What we can do is we can say that, yep, okay, all looks good here. We want to see that we have a src directory. This is where your source code goes. So src is your source code. In this directory, there's a couple of things. We have main.jsx. What you'll see in a lot of React work these days is it's JSX. So it's JavaScript extended or JavaScript XML. It's a really nice way to mix HTML and JavaScript together. So it's in the one file alongside of all sorts of different coding and syntaxes, but it all just works together. Now this file, we don't really have to touch it. All it's doing is it's saying it needs to find an element on the page and start rendering a React app inside that element. So what that means for us is the Vite build tool provided a index.html file for us. It has an element that the code is going to find, and it's going to run our React, which will replace this div with a whole bunch of other content. So the way that React typically works is that you have your HTML page. It has some default settings like a title and an icon. We can customize all of that. So we can say that this is Alex's super cool Pokedex. And if we save that, Vite will detect it and reload. So when this page is loaded in the browser, you can see that the changes already happened.
I don't believe it's Alex's day. The internet gods are furious. Hopefully we see him back soon. I want to learn more about Alex's super cool Pokedex.
Hang on. Wait.
Oh, he's back.
Hey! Okay. We'll hold tight. Maybe he's nearly back. He's halfway. The count is 0. He's gone.
Oh no.
Oh man.
Oh, there we go.
Unstable internet.
We love unstable internet.
I mean, it's Australia.
For the
We don't
most
know
part,
anything
this
else.
is usually a one-off. Alex's internet's usually really good. Probably something
Yeah.
might be going on in his street for the most part.
That's it. Look, I mean, look, as someone who is located in Brisbane, everything's all over the shop right now. Whether it's internet, it's power, who knows what's going on. So I'm accustomed to these things since the cyclone.
Okay,
Alex, you're
he's
back.
back. Hand it back over to you.
Cool. I'm oh, there we go. It took a while for the cameras to come back. But yes, as Tom says, there is stuff going on in the street today. There's a house that's being built and putting in a pool. So there's a gigantic crane rolling around, knocking everything about. And the heat just wrecks the ambient here. Yeah, I wish I had Japan's internet connection. It was so good going over there, having connection everywhere. But we just have suburban Sydney internet. We'll screen share. I think I'm on the hotspot. It looks like it's switched back to Ethernet again, which may or may not be good. We'll see how we go. But we'll get the Zoom windows back up and running. All right. Can everyone see my screen? Just let me know in the chat. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Alrighty. So, what I was saying before the internet cut was that we have our React app. It's running the HTML page, and the HTML page is running this JavaScript. So this JavaScript has found an element on the page, and it's replaced that little piece of HTML with this really cool, complex React app. And what we need to do is just customize that app. So in our code, and the live share may have dropped with that as well. We'll put that back in the chat. What we'll do is we'll look at this src/main.jsx file and just edit what that is, because that represents the React app. So main.jsx, it says, yep, we'll find the root of the React app. It's going to find the root of the page and render content inside of that. And we render in a strict mode to make things more optimal and nicely done. We'll render the app, and the app comes from another file. So the app component is imported from app.jsx. So we can have a look at that file as well. And you can see here, it's a JavaScript function that returns HTML plus a bunch of other stuff. Like it's got JavaScript syntax mixed into it. This is what makes JSX so powerful, is that you can put your JavaScript directly in with your HTML, basically side by side, and do things in a really clever, optimal way. So if you wanted to render a list of content, you would find a JavaScript array and use that to render content, instead of manually typing out HTML and copying and pasting and making this big, messy thing. You'd just be using JavaScript code to do that in a really optimal way. So what we want to do for our React app, thinking back on the features that we want to let a person search. So they need to be able to type in a name, and then we need to pass that name over to some other feature. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete all the stuff that's here, except for brackets in the return block. So we are returning some HTML, but we need to have a container for that. And we can just do a h1. This is nice because it's just a HTML header. We can say that this is the super cool Pokedex, and we'll save it. You'll see that I'm getting some errors or warnings up here. This is just saying that if you're going to import something, that you should use it. So because we deleted a bunch of that boilerplate starter code, it's now saying that we should delete this stuff as well. So we'll do that. We'll delete those lines there. So this, what we're seeing now, is the most simple, basic version of a React component. React built on components means that you can make things and use them again and again and again. So this app, we could use it across the website in multiple places and see this H1 appear multiple times. And I'm unable to join. I might just restart it then. So we can stop the collab session and make a new one, because it's always very handy to have the live share going. We'll copy that link into the chat again. Thanks for letting me know about that too. But that should be a new one now. We'll just check the web browser, making sure that we have the header to the content that was there is now gone. So we know that we can render content. We can start doing things with that. For our project, we want to be able to look at and let a user enter a name. In HTML, you'd be doing that with a standard input field. So you'd be learning about that in term 1, like just the basic HTML stuff. And then you'd be coming back to it in term 2 to mix it in with JavaScript. So we can do an input of text. One of the cool things about VS Code is that you can type in like shorthands or shortcuts, and you can just hit enter. So going in colon text lets you create a whole bunch of syntactical HTML really, really quickly, because there are these really good abbreviations in VS Code that just lets you get things done quicker. So we have an input field. The name for this one will be the search name. So we want to say that whatever we type in here, if we have a screen reader or some sort of accessibility features, we can say that this is where you type in the search name. Like the technology out there for assisting people to use the web will hook into those types of features on our code. Put an ID of search name as well, because we know that we just want the one input field. And to make it nice and readable, we'll do a label. We'll do a label for Pokemon name, and we'll make sure that the label, for the sake of accessibility as well, it is HTML4, the search name input field. So this label, if someone's using like keyboard controls instead of a mouse for any particular reason, they'll look at this label and they'll hit tab to move to it, and it'll jump to this particular input field and stuff like that. So we can kind of nicely organize our page through little features in HTML like that. So we have the label component, we have the input field. If we save it, we'll have a look at the browser. We have the input field here. And it's really cool because we can type in it, but the trouble is it's not in React. There's this concept in React called a controlled component. It just means that whatever we do in the website, if we want it to work in React, React has to control it. So the data is here, it exists, and that's fine, but we need to change that and make it work just a little bit differently. So what we can do, why is it giving me a warning there? No, that should be fine. What we can do is we can say that we want to keep track of it in the React system. And that just means that we need to keep track of the state of a given value. So we will say that we want to let a search name and a function to update the search name come from a little hook in React. So we have a use state hook. And we can import that really quickly as well. So just hit tab to import use state from React. It's all pre-built. So these two variables here, they represent two different things that React provides for us. We have a read-only value, so the name of what we're going to type, and the function to update that read-only value, because we're not supposed to directly update it. It's controlled through React. We use these in our input field, so we can say that whatever we type will go and live in the React system. So what we'll do is we'll say that the value is search name. So these curly brackets here, this suddenly adds JavaScript into what was previously just a HTML element. So we say that whatever the value of search name is now lives inside this input component, as well as in React coming from the state system. And then we also say, whenever this changes, we want to take that event and we want to say that we want to set the search name to the event.target.value. It's kind of a long-winded way to say that whatever we've just typed goes into React, but it also means that whatever we type now lives in React. Like we can have this piece of data anywhere. So if we save this and go back to the browser, we can type in super cool stuff like I was here, awesome, and it doesn't really look that different. The reason for this is because React does a lot of things internally. So one of the cool things that you'll come across in the lessons and in the industry is an extension called the React DevTools. So if I open that up here, if you're on a different browser, you'll have to look in the extension store for that. But this extension lets us poke into a React app. Any React app. It doesn't have to be one that you've made. It could be someone else's React app like Facebook or Instagram. And you can start seeing the data that lives inside that app. So for us, to confirm that we've just made code that works, we need to open up the DevTools. We need to go to our components, and we want to have a look at the app component here. So we can see that the app component, that's where we've been doing our code so far, that has state. So that state is the value of the data. We'll see it's the right one. There we go. So the search name is here, and it represents the right value. This updates fairly quickly as well. So we can say we have Pikachu. The state updates as we type. It's all pretty cool. And that means that when we make our code, we can pass that value from one component to another. So we can do a whole bunch of cool stuff there. Just seeing as well how we're doing for time. I know we've had internet issues wrecking the time too. Um, so what we want to do is we have a look at our code and create a way for us to share this name with another component. So for the sake of showing what we would be doing, I'll show a little bit of code that's kind of not quite there yet, but in a React app like this, you would be doing something like uh, Pokemon data viewer and passing in a name that is just the search name. So you would create another component. This doesn't exist yet in the project, but you just say that, yep, this value is passed over to that component, and that component can do all sorts of things with it. And Pratha asking, do the React DevTools function like an inspect element function on Firefox? Pretty much. It's a similar system. So the DevTools, we have the Elements tab for doing that inspection as well. But with the Components tab, when we start making more components, you'll see that we actually have a big component tree, and that's where you'd be going through and clicking on things like it's to the element tree as well. So they're very similar, but this is like the React specific version. So you can see more React data here. But they're very similar though. It's a good comparison. So actually, just to show that, we'll get this Pokemon data viewer component to exist, and that'll show that question as well. So I'm going to save this file. It's going to throw an error because this Pokemon data viewer does not exist yet, but that's okay. So we'll go down to the end here. If we try and render this page in the browser, it will error like that. There we go. So Pokemon data viewer is not defined. That's okay. We'll go and create that component now. So we'll make Pokemon data viewer.jsx. We want to export a function named Pokemon data viewer. We want to bring in a Pokemon name. So we need to basically declare what we are expecting for this function. We want to return, let's just return a name for now. So we could say that this will be the target Pokemon is Pokemon name. So this code here, it's not going to do too much yet, but it'll just show that we can share data across components. So we'll save it. The live share as well, you should be able to jump across to these files as we go through it. You can dig around on your own in the files, or you can follow what I'm doing here. It should be automatic unless you click around for things. But in general, that's the process of what we do. So that component exists. We'll get this imported. We could type out the path to import it manually, but I am a bit lazy. Oh, maybe we should remarket that. We're not lazy, we're efficient, because that's what programmers do. We make things efficient. We'll backspace on the Pokemon data viewer and type R. VS Code is really cool for this because it automatically knows that that component exists in the project. So we don't have to type out a whole big path automatically, or manually, I should say. We can just get the name in and it automatically imports the file at the top of the code. So really nice little optimizations like that in how we just get things built. If we go back to our browser now, we can say that, yep, we have Pikachu. It's automatically shared to that component. And we can see in the components DevTools, we do have these different components represented in a tree. So this component tree here, this lets us see what data is moving around and where things are going to happen. So for the sake of just getting things done real quickly in the time we've got left, what I'm going to do is we are going to make a brief bit of code that will retrieve some data from the Pokemon API, and then just display that data. So we want to say, we want to have a use effect. This is just a way for us to be able to do some code when a certain event happens in the web page. What we do, and this might seem a bit esoteric until we get to that point in the course, because again, this is term 2 concepts. This particular use effect with these empty square brackets, this runs once per page. What this means is that if you had other pieces of data in your code, you could make a use effect that listens to it. So it could be some data we want to track. If this piece of data ever changes, this block of code runs again. So if we want it to run once, we just make sure that there's no value in the square brackets here. So we only want to track when the page loads, and that's it. But what we'll do is we'll say that we want to make a function. It's asynchronous, so it may take time to get this data. And what we want to do is get a response from a fetch request. So this is a JavaScript concept where it lets us fetch data from some source that lives elsewhere. For us, that means we want to fetch data from the Pokemon API. We'll do pokeapi.co/api/v2/Pokemon/. I know it's a lot of stuff to type out there. I do this type of project so much. I've got that URL burned into my brain. And I love Pokemon. Again, it's all in the background here. So this URL plus the Pokemon name. This lets us retrieve data or request data from the API. We save the response, and then we want to process that data into a JSON format. Kind of similar to the heart of that project that we showed before, the package.json. So JSON is JavaScript object notation. It lets us just have a nice interchangeable format for any language to just share data. So we have that data coming through. We want to set this into state in some place so we can render it. So we'll say that we have data and set data, and that'll be a use state of an object. That should be pretty cool. We want to save the data from the API. So we say the set data is now data. The names could probably be a little bit better here, but we want to say that we are setting the result of the API request into our React app. So we are storing that data for our own purposes. We have that function, it exists. We can then call it. So we say that we are declaring the code here and then telling it to run that code in this line here as well. When that exists, we can render it. So we say that data.name, if data.name exists, we can render a nice little let's make it a H3. So it's not quite a full heading, but it's a nice little bit of code. In this heading, we can say that we have json.stringify of data. So if data exists, we want to see it. So we'll just make that code and save it to test it. We get nothing quite yet. We get Pikachu because that was there by default. If we refresh this page, we should get nothing because there's no data to work with. If we type in Pikachu again, how are we doing? That's right. There was a trick to this because we've told the code to run when the page loads, and there was no name to show when the page first loads. So the trick that we should maybe try out as well is to make this little bit of the use effect code here listen to the Pokemon name. So we can say that when this data changes, we want to run this function again. It's going to be a little bit of a problem because we don't want the function to run on invalid names, but that would take a little bit more time and effort to sort out here. So we type in Pikachu, we get the request. It's a pretty fast API. If we type in Mewtwo, we eventually get that data as well. So we can then use all of this data, and you can see it's a lot of data. We can use this in other HTML elements. So I reckon we'll do one little bit of code, like one little feature so we can see the Pokemon that we've requested, and then stop there for the sake of time because I'm looking at the clock for that one. Well, let's say that we have the name, so we could render H3 of data.name, and we could do something similar for an image. So we could say data.sprites.front_default. So we'll get the default picture from a particular Pokemon. If that exists, we will render an image tag. And we'll say the source of this image is data.sprites.front. If I could type properly, front_default. So we're not going to render the entire object, but we just render the name and the image to see things work. So we'll save that code. Looking at that code there, looks pretty good. Let's do another one. We'll go for Rayquaza. We have the image there. I think that's pretty cool. In the chat, maybe you can throw in some Pokemon names and we can see that they work in the React app that we've built. But otherwise, that's our brief little dive into React there. Right on from Dallas, we'll have a look. Look at our boy. That's pretty cool. So with that, I think we'll stop there because I know we're looking at the time. Pratha saying Charizard, let's get the Charizard happening. Look at that. Love it. I think that's pretty good. What we can do is we can commit this work to the repository. So we have a feature of Pokedex app built at an MVP level. So it's pretty basic, but it gets the data and it shows the data. This now exists. So if anyone wants to go back and look at the code from this particular session, I'll put that link in the chat. So that all exists here. You can see it's a bunch of default stuff plus our 2 components that we've made, and it all exists for everyone to see. With that, I'll stop the screen share, and thank you for following along and watching with that lesson there.
Cool. So good. Thank you so much, Alex. That was like so much information in such a short period of time. But I'm really glad that you were here to deliver it. Unfortunately, the internet playing up was a little bit of a thorn of our sides, but we got there in the end, and it was a really cool application. Tom,
Yeah,
did we have any questions as we were rolling through?
absolutely. Just give me 1 second and I'll pop up some of the questions that we had. Where are they? I'm so sorry. There we are. So we had a question earlier from Hash asking what are the chances of coding getting replaced by AI? And that's more of a general question rather than Alex specific. So I'll open the space for both Dallas and Alex to have a bit of an opinion on that one.
Yeah.
I'll let you go first, Alex. Yeah, for sure.
So the chances of coding getting replaced by AI, if it was going to happen, it would happen already. AI has been around for a little bit now. One of the things that we see a lot with people using AI is that it's okay for like beginner boilerplate stuff, but then we just saw as well, even in our session here, we got boilerplate from a command, and then we still had to go and do our own features to make things work. So anything that's worth doing and worth doing well and professionally, you still need someone involved to do that. You might see in workplaces that they'll be involving AI as like an assistive tool to help you just get things happening a little bit quicker. But in general, with things like even the AI hallucinations, you can't fully replace someone. You need someone there to help make sure that things are working as expected and to help get those complex things, the things worth paying someone a salary for, get those things done. So it's still going to need
Mm,
coding and developers to code the whole step of the way.
Cool.
all
Awesome.
good.
Yeah, no, I don't really need to add to that. That was great.
And with that in mind as well, like when it comes down to it, we do have another question here. I didn't catch who sent it, but for the most part, it's more towards your lesson, Alex. A lot of students like to install Visual Studio Code as soon as they can, so they can play around. What is the recommended stable version that you would recommend to install, essentially?
Whatever's latest on their website. So VS Code will update itself automatically whenever updates come through. So if you just grab the latest one or whatever's recommended on the site, even if it goes out of date, it'll get an update itself as soon as it can. So whatever you install shouldn't really matter, just as long as it's VS Code, and it'll keep itself up to date.
Awesome,
Perfect.
awesome, awesome. And this one's for you, Dallas. What's your May intake date?
Yeah, so there's no there yeah, so no comment essentially. We haven't gone public with anything else except past the 31st of March intake at the moment. So just keep your ear to the ground as far as marketing emails go and changes on our website. But at the moment, March 31st is the only intake that we have live.
Awesome. And with that in mind, I actually do have a question for Alex here. So, given your years of experience teaching the course itself, do you have any like success stories from some students that you've taught yourself in terms of where they are at right now? If that makes sense, that is.
Yeah, I mean the favorite ones that I keep telling the students about are the ones that we have that go to like Canva and Atlassian. Their local industry, it's fantastic. So the students that go to those, like not every company has the exact same tech stack that we teach because
Mm,
some industries will do things a little bit different.
mm,
Those students that went to Atlassian, for example, Atlassian uses Java. So the interview process for that was really interesting and eye-opening for them. It was a completely different tech stack for the students to apply to. But they got into it because they have all of these problem solving skills and communication skills and the
mm,
portfolio of their own projects to back up their work. So
mm,
stuff like that helps them a lot in getting to basically any type of company.
mm,
Um, another good one that's I want to say a recent one. We've had front-end designers that are working at McDonald's. So if you use like the MyMackers app, they are doing React to make the
Mm.
MyMackers app, and it's all React components to make things interactive on their menus. So we've got students there as well.
Ah,
That's pretty
sick
cool.
as. And when it comes down to, you mentioned before portfolio. So what type of support do we provide in terms of your own experience when it comes down to helping students build their portfolio and but also kind of take that break into for some of us a new career altogether, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, with IT in particular, it's almost like a creative industry where your portfolio is the big key thing. So we provide as much support as we can, like making sure you've got things to show off and like showcase as projects, as well as having a portfolio website. Like yes,
Mm,
we have LinkedIn and GitHub. We help everyone set up those as well. But one of the assignments that we have early on in the course is to make a portfolio website, and you'll be able to continually update that as you build more things. So seeing that and helping students build that and letting students, encouraging students to build and grow that as the course goes on. That's always really cool. So we just make sure that we can help with that in every step of the way, making sure you've got content to show, a website to
mm,
show it, profiles on social media to show it as well.
mm.
All sorts of just as much support as we can.
Sweet.
Awesome. And yeah, that's probably all the questions I have on my end. If anyone in chat wants to ask Alex any type of questions, definitely feel free to do it now while you have us on the line. Because let's be real here, right? It's always a lot better to ask him now and forever hold your peace. I mean, to ask him now, so then that way we can answer it to you straight away, and then you don't have to go through like endless tracks of emails to find an answer for the most part. So, but yeah, Dallas, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, sure. So there's one there from Prafna. What are the apps slash tools should we download?
That's a really good question. I don't want to say like a long list, but there is a list of stuff. Essentially, you'll be told and guided on how to install things through the course, so you don't have to rush and do things before the course starts.
Mm,
But VS Code, that's kind of the key thing that underpins everything that we do.
mm,
GitHub, you'll be doing that in the terminal, so you'll be installing it there. Um, at various points in the course, you'll be installing different languages. Top five,
mm,
all right. So VS Code, GitHub. Postgres, MongoDB, having those installed. Um, I reckon Node.js as well. Like that's something that you have to install in the course.
mm,
There are other tools as well. Like because we do build web servers in two different technologies, we have tools to use like Bruno or Insomnia that let you test those web servers and just make sure that they give out the right data. So stuff like that, we make sure we're using that. There's different testing libraries. There's different like wireframing tools. There's so much that we cram into the course. You'll see a lot in the course as we go through it.
mm.
Full on. Awesome, cool. And George asks here, so he says the demo used the Node server. Is everything in that demo actually client side, uh, or is there some back end rendering going on as well?
I love this question because it's such a big thing. There's been I can go on a rant about this. There's been kind of a bubble in some tech circles about doing back-end rendering, and it's not in the industry. It's insane that there are so many people doing back-end rendering when it's just not in companies. So what we do is we have front-end rendering with a React app. So what we saw in Vite in the lesson here was that Vite was bundling the React app in real time, which means that everything that we built was running directly in the browser. So things like the backend rendering, that would be a server that is rendering the HTML and sending that to the browser, which is a little bit different. It costs more for a website to run if it does that, which means that we don't want to do that, and companies don't want to do that. So we don't do that in our course at all. So we make sure that whatever we do, we have front end rendering, we have the back end web servers, they are separate applications. Even when we do the full stack project in term two, that's still essentially two applications in a trench coat because that's what full stack applications are. It's front end and
Mm.
back end. So we have that. Like that's something that we'll be looking at and digging into a lot through the course because yes, that type of rendering that matters a lot. But all the React stuff that we do is on the client side.
Mm.
Cool.
And I
And
think
so George has got a
yeah, go
yeah, no,
Dallas.
so yeah. So George has got a follow up there. So that bundling, is it just putting all the files together into a single HTML, for example?
Yes. Essentially, if I can screen share again real quick, I might just do that because it helps just to demo this one. It's such a good
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
question. I'll share, replace the current share with this one. What we see in React is that we do have all these separate files, but if we do npm run build, we get the transformation of the project. So we've created a distribution folder, and that just has one HTML file in it. So a React app, it's kind of simulated. It's not really multiple web pages. It's just the one HTML file, and then a whole bunch of JavaScript runs on top of that to replace everything and make it look like there's multiple pages. So it's all client side, but in this folder here, it's just one HTML page. So it's really nice, and the bundling makes things really optimal in that way. But I'll stop the screen share there. I hope that answers the question there, because it's a really cool thing to dig into when we get to that point in the course.
Sweet. Cool. I'm not sure if we have any other questions at the moment, but look, guys, if anyone has any questions, absolutely throw them in. Otherwise, you can contact us and ask more questions there as well. So George says, okay, thanks. That is the magic back-end rendering I was referring to. Cool, cool.
Cool.
So look, you can join us for our next info session. It's going to be in April there, and it's going to be a panel chat with Coder Academy. So if you want to scan that QR code, you can. Otherwise, you can go to the website manually and register for that info session. Here is me and Tom in cartoon form. If you want to contact us, feel free to do so with any further questions that maybe you didn't want to ask live. And we're happy to have a bit of a chat. So that's our details. And you have any further questions about the course, absolutely reach out to us. Otherwise, the applications are open now for our 31st of March intake. And we look forward to seeing everyone apply soon. I think that's about it, guys. So we might call it there. It's been beautiful. Thank you so much, Alex, for being here and delivering that presentation. And thank you so much, Tom, for also being here and manning live chat. Cool.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everyone.
See ya. Bye.